Carl and I will be talking about the Canyon Lake Fish Habitat Improvement Project. It's a collaborative effort involving Canyon Bass Club of San Marcos, Water-Oriented Recreation District of Comal County, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which are also the controlling authority for Canyon Lake, and of course Texas Parks and Wildlife. I'd just like to mention the Canyon Bass Club is a Friends of Reservoir chapter member. Carl is a representative of the club. Just some brief points about the lake itself. It's 8,308 acres, built in 1964. So again, I think Jeff mentioned about an average of 60 years or so for Texas reservoirs, and this is getting close to that. Built on the Guadalupe River, and it's between San Marcos and San Antonio, to give you an idea of some perspective, the location. The thing about this reservoir is that it lacks complex woody habitat for fish, has very limited aquatic vegetation, primarily due to large extremes in water levels. It's also a steep topography and hard, rocky substrate. And of course, the lack of structure makes fishing difficult too. The solution then was to add some live ash and juniper brush piles to increase the woody habitat complexity for fish, and at the same time enhance fishing opportunities. Basically, the project was started in 2005, and I've only been there for the last 2 years. Carl has been there since the beginning, right?
Well,
almost.
We joined into it. Actually, Texas Park and Wildlife started it, and we joined into it about 3 years after they started it to provide them extra labor because it's pretty labor intensive.
Since the start, it's grown to 43 habitat placement sites in the reservoir. These sites have become popular fishing destinations for anglers, and Texas Parks and Wildlife has documented increased fishing success and angling satisfaction. But over time, these structures degrade, and so we have to refurbish them. And in 2014, our aim was to enhance the number of existing sites and expand the total acreage of complex woody habitat for fish. To help accomplish this, the Canyon Bass Club applied for and received funding from Friends of Reservoirs to cover 2 years worth of work on this project. And here I'm going to hand over to Carl, and he can talk a little bit about how the Bass Club got involved in this project, how they got involved in Friends of Reservoirs, and how they went through the grant application process.
First of all, we're a real old bass club, and we've been we're almost 50 years old. We've been very fortunate in the fact that I think throughout the life of the Bass Club, we've had people in Texas Park and Wildlife, employees that were members of the Bass Club. So we have a strong relationship with Texas Park and Wildlife, which has helped our members become very conservation aware and very conservation oriented, and we've been that way for quite a few years. And when we were first approached, Tim Cook actually first approached us about joining Friends of Reservoirs. Everybody was enthusiastic, but some way it sort of fell through the cracks and we didn't join. And then Dave Terry came back and approached us again, and it was almost unanimous. Like, why didn't we join the first? Yeah, we want to join that. So we joined the Friends of Reservoirs. We have been working on the Canyon Lake project for quite a few years at that point in time, and helping with this brush pile project, which was originally funded by one of the other partners. Word had funded it originally, and we were running short of funds. And then when we found out later that Friends of Reservoirs had the grants, we applied for one of the grants to help us continue to do the reservoir project, putting brush piles in Canyon Lake, as well as to enhance that and grow that particular project, because we had some goals there also. And so it was a natural fit. We applied for the project, and we're fortunate enough to get the project, and now are continuing it and even enhancing it in what we do with the project.
And I think one of the things Carl mentioned to me one time was just looking at the bottom line there in terms of how much the grant provided and how much in-kind services that we gathered.
To me, the $1,000 and the $22,000 worth of effort out of it is a real good return on that investment.
One of the advantages of working at this site is that we can get all the trees on site courtesy of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. At the same time, because there were designated areas from which we got the trees, it also helped out in terms of the management of the park which they operate. And I don't know if you can make it out, but there are designated areas on the slide there which we were able to get our trees. And if you can see on the right-hand side, there's a little solid green polygon, and that's our staging area where all the work was carried out. Ideally, we were looking for trees that were around 4 to 6 inches in diameter at the base and about 8 feet tall. And we had a bunch of people in designated areas, all with specific jobs. There were tree cutters armed with chainsaws. There were people whose sole job was just to drag all the trees to the trailers, load the trailers. We had drivers to take the trailers down to the staging area. While all this was going on, we also had personnel that went out on the boat and actually located all the sites that we were going to put all our brush piles using GPS and sonar, and marked those locations with buoys, so it would make it much easier, obviously, when we go to deploy the brush piles, so we know exactly where we're aiming.
This is just an example of where the brush has been cut and put in, being taken actually off the trailer there. But and juniper, I call it cedar, but anyway, it's basically what we use because that's readily available in the park, close, and it's a good structure for us to use on the project.
Once it's offloaded, of course, we assemble a bunch of the trees and use cable ties and cinder blocks as weights, bundle them up, ready. And then a little bit of reorganization goes on at the boat ramp to get everything set so that finally it looks like this, where we have, by the end of the day, all the brush piles on this boat ramp are ready.
We have about 100 brush piles we do every time, and we're very fortunate on this. There are boat ramps that was originally built that are no longer used, so we're able to use actually a vacated boat ramp, so we're not blocking anything and nothing's closed for anybody. And this is actually one of the vacated boat ramps that we're allowed to use and stock everything on that boat ramp.
And it was 120 tree bundles that we did in the end, and refurbished 10 existing sites and one new one. Now, obviously on projects like this, as we all know, many hands make light work. The other thing to remember is that an army always marches on its stomach. And here we have our fisheries chief, Dave Terry.
You might recognize the cook up there, yes.
Right. Not only was he helping out with all the work with the brush piles, he also provided the food for that day. So we move on to day 2, and I think there was a question earlier about which were the preferred days for doing work. Well, the way it worked out in this particular situation, to maximize or organize our labor better, we had the first day was on a Sunday, and the second day was on the Monday.
Yeah, that works out best for us. We can't get a lot of our people work, and so we can't get the labor force for them there on a weekday, but we can get them there on a Sunday. And then the Texas Park and Wildlife would rather not be out there running around with all the pleasure boaters running all over the lake on the weekend, and so the dumping of the brush piles on Monday works out best. So the Sunday-Monday combination is what we found work best through different experimentations for this, because we can do the work on Sunday and have the people, and then Texas Park and Wildlife can go dump them then on Monday.
On day 2, we had all the volunteers at the staging area on the boat ramp, and we had boat crews, and then we had people loading the boat at maybe 5 to 8 bundles at a time. And this is typically how it looked. Fully loaded boats. Some of the time we had to deal with, obviously when you're going off on windy conditions too, some of the tree branches and things start moving around and you have to sit on them to keep them in place. And then each boat would then go off to the designated area. You can probably see the little yellow buoys on either side. They'd aim for that location and then drop off the structure right in between. Second, a WORD, or Water-Oriented Recreational District of Comal County, provided the lunch. And that social aspect that you get can't be sort of overstated too. There's a lot of bonding, if you like, going on at lunch times and things like that. It's a good social activity, and I think that helps to make the actual project more fun. Well, how did we go and promote all this? Well, typically after each event we'd do, Parks and Wildlife would do a press release, and in 2014 there was a press release immediately after the project was completed, and it was picked up by various outdoor networks. And then, of course, we use social media, Facebook. Various partners in the project had posts on Facebook. And then also newsletters, Canyon Bass Club, Word. They promoted the work that was done. We also have a monthly newspaper column in the San Marcos Daily Record. This is the San Marcos District Office that writes that. And we devoted an article to that project. Also on the Texas Parks and Wildlife website, we have a map, kind of like the one I showed earlier, with all the sites on there. We have GPS or coordinates on there. We have downloadable files so that people can use those for their GPS units. And we have a brief description of the area, and also when the structures were installed, when they were refurbished, and so you have a history for each of the sites. And then also we have some idea of how effective these brush piles are from a viewpoint of attracting fish. But I want to get Carl's input on what the Bass Club and anglers think about the project in terms of its effectiveness.
Well, unfortunately, my members that do it, they do it because they want to catch fish. That's not what I do it for, but I mean, they like catching fish off of them. They do catch fish off of them. They fish off of them. They like them. But in reality, what I think we're doing is building little hotels for the entire life structure of the whole fishery, because everything from the very small vertebrates to the things that come on up through the entire cycle of the fish are there located in those brush piles. To this date, we've put around 800 brush piles, we think, into the lake. We don't have an exact count, but created these 43 sites. And to me, y'all were talking earlier about, how can you measure the success? I don't know how you do it, because you're the biologist. I'm not. The way I actually look at it is that it's like the policeman. Every time he takes a drunk off the street, he says, I maybe have prevented one wreck or saved one life. Well, to me, every time I put out one of these brush piles, I think, okay, if there's some small fish that live there and don't get eaten by the larger fish, then I've improved this fishery. And I can't give you a scientific count on it, but that's the way I look at it. Everything I do that, and I think that's the way a lot of our fishermen look at it, that I try to convince to them, if we save a few small fish, then we've improved the fishery. I can't give you the scientific voting on it or anything, or give you a study on it, but I know it has improved the fishery, and I feel like I'm saving a few fish by putting these in. I think this is a real good example, though, for you. You notice there wasn't big boats, there wasn't an awful lot of money spent on it, but yet through grouping several organizations and these connections together, we've done a significant service for this lake now over a period of time at a very, very low cost. And by us providing the manpower, Texas Park and Wildlife providing the expertise and the connections and everything, Army Corps of Engineers, allowing us to do it and giving us the guidelines what to do it on their lake. And then WORD, which is an association around the lake, they're also helping financially and through manpower also. We've also had Hays County Master Naturalists come out and help. Boy Scouts over the years sometimes have come out and helped. So it's a good community project as well.
And at this point, we're ready for any questions anyone might have.